At night, the Soviet Air Force launched raids on the German defensive front. This was 1 kilometer long and defended by Tiger tank commander Otto Carius. Soviet pathfinders flew over the German front line and dropped massive illumination flares called Christmas trees by the German troops. Guided by lights, the medium bombers flew over to carpet bomb the German positions. Pretty soon, the entire German front line and tactical rear looked like the surface of the moon. There were craters the size of single-family houses. These bombing operations were aimed at softening up the German defenses before the February 1944 Red Army offensive in Estonia. After every Soviet bomber raid, Carius performed ground reconnaissance to find out where the gigantic bomb craters were. He memorized their locations so his Tiger tanks wouldn't fall in them and get stuck. After days of guard duty, Carius and his wingman Kircher performed combat reconnaissance. The Tiger tanks run to the Soviet T-34s and exchange fire. This is it. The T-34s are at the front and the Soviet offensive is about to begin. The Tiger tanks return to base. All of the 75 infantrymen in their settlements are preparing for the defensive battle from 3 central positions. They do last-minute work by further reinforcing the farmhouses that they intend to fight from. The infantry has also detected movement of Soviet field artillery. The Red Army is just 70 meters away from the German defensive front, and there have been failures in the German preparations for defense. The frozen ground is almost impossible to dig in, and the trench system around the farmhouses would have made a much more effective defensive front. Carius travels to the regimental headquarters of the 61st Infantry Division directly in his rear. The regimental commander, Major Haas, is in a critical situation with limited options. His decimated regiment, with only 2 battalions combined, has only the combat strength of 1 infantry company. This is only 150 men. Carius and his wingman Kircher have 2 Tigers supporting half of the infantry, while Sergeant Goring on his western flank has 4 Tiger tanks. The Soviet air and artillery preparation continues on Carius' frontline sector. The settlements defended by a mere 75 German infantry get carpet bombed by the Soviet medium bombers. The farmhouses collapse into 3 separate ruins that would become the main resistance nests in the coming battle. The air and artillery strikes inflict the first losses on the German infantry, including the new replacements. Incendiary munitions set the settlements ablaze. Carius' pair of Tiger tanks wait out the firestorm. When it is over, they collect numerous wounded and transport them to the aid station. Major Haas orders Carius to stay in position, and he has no reinforcements to spare. They will have to defend with what little they had. The Major promises to provide fuel and ammunition deliveries to the Tigers. The 1 kilometer long defensive front across from the Soviet bridgehead was now based on 3 groups of ruins. In the battle to come, they will be called Ruins 1, 2, and 3. The remaining infantry entrenched themselves in the ruins, with a section of only 10 to 12 fighters each. Essentially, the defensive front was just a weak position of 3 strong points with only the combat strength of a single infantry platoon. Last-minute preparations are being made as rations are being supplied to the infantry nests. The battle has not yet begun, but Carius is already exhausted. He is unwashed, lice-infected with scabs, but he is so tired that he doesn't feel the itch anymore. Carius' Tiger has a leaking radiator, and the 2nd Company 502nd Heavy Panzer Battalion dispatches 2 Tigers to take over Carius' position. Meanwhile, he and his wingman's Tiger tanks are getting repaired. The repair platoon gives Carius and his wingman Kircher 24 hours of rest for its crew while they inspect and repair the Tiger tanks. The 2 Tiger tank crews make their way to the beach off of the Gulf of Finland and wash in the freezing water. They sleep, enjoy the sauna, and have what could be the last meal of their lives. But things don't go well for the 2 replacement Tigers at the front. Both Tigers are damaged by mortar fire. Carius and wingman Kircher's Tiger tanks relieve them and take over the 1 kilometer front line in the East Sac. On the 17th March 1944, the 6 divisions of the Soviet 109th and 6th Rifle Corps launched an offensive against the weak German 61st Infantry Division. The Soviet goal is to demolish the German resistance in front of them and steamroll them all the way to the coast. Supply lines needed to be cut in order to force the collapse of the German defense at Narva to the east. The most ideal scenario would be an encirclement and destruction of 2 German divisions and the Panzer Corps holding Narva. Before dawn, the Soviets launched their ground assault, supported by mass artillery and airstrikes. The airstrikes include extensive use of smoke bombs to blind German artillery observers into ineffectiveness. The Soviet artillery preparation occurred all across the 61st Infantry Division's front line, to the point where the Schwerpunkt, or the area of main effort, could not be determined initially. The shelling is so heavy that the communication wire is cut by artillery fire, and the infantry nests are also pinned down by fire. The 2 Tiger tanks are coated in mud, and starting the engine itself is a chore. Typically, it takes 15 minutes to start the engine. By standard regulations, the Germans prefer to take 2 hours, including inspections, to prepare a Tiger for action. But while the Tigers are guarding the front and under fire, such precautions are impossible. With such a cold engine, an unreliable battery, and vacuum tubes, Carius' Tiger tank warms up but the radio sets fail to work. The 2 Tiger tanks are now both deaf, and Carius orders his wingmen to hold position. Carius' 1 kilometer defense sector is completely ablaze with artillery and airstrikes, and the Soviet ground assault has already entered German territory. A section of German infantry retreat, having abandoned their strongpoint in the East Sack. This is followed by a retreating 37mm flak artillery, a prime mover, and 30 more unarmed German soldiers running away. Carius finds out that their position had been shattered by a firestorm. The Soviets have brought up 5 pieces of anti-tank artillery. At 10 a.m., the Tigers are ready for combat and start moving. The Germans believe that the first wave of the Soviet attack is 12 tanks, supported by a battalion of approximately 400 to 300 Soviet infantry. They are already swarming into the East Sack and are aiming at destroying the regimental command post on the high ground to the rear of Carius' defense sector. The Red Army tank columns with tank riders slowly move across corduroy roads. These are special roads painstakingly made out of wooden beams to prevent armored vehicles from getting bogged down and stuck in soft ground. They are a common feature of the Leningrad front. Carius' defense element is protected by swampland on 2 sides, which are impassable by tanks. The direction of the Soviet attack is thus known by the Germans, and it's a tactical advantage for Carius' massively outnumbered force. The Red Army infantry fan out and begin crossing the rail line, only 80 meters away from Carius' position. The Germans face them with only 2 Tiger tanks and the equivalent of 1 platoon of infantry holed up in 3 sets of ruins. Carius observes that 1 out of 12 Soviet tanks is a heavily armored KV tank. Carius and his wingman Kersher position themselves for battle. The Tiger tank could efficiently destroy the T-34 at 3,000 meters, but the terrain conditions forced them to fight at close and medium range. The Soviet artillery and air offensive has already allowed the Red Army to infiltrate the East Sack. The advanced T-34 is 800 meters away and already near the regimental command post on Kinderheim Hill. The main group of 1 Soviet infantry battalion, 400 meters away, advances toward the regimental command post to the rear of Carius' position. 5 T-34s with mounted tank riders advance behind them 500 meters away. 5 Soviet anti-tank artillery pieces move up and position themselves on the railroad embankment 80 meters away. At these ranges, the T-34s can penetrate the Tiger tank's side armor. This battle will be down to the tactical skill of 2 of the best Tiger tank crews in the German military. The Soviet anti-tank artillery fires first on Carius and Kersher. Carius' Tiger tank takes hits to the running gear. Carius orders his wingman to pull back 30 meters. The German 61st Infantry Division launches artillery strikes against the battery, inflicting losses. Carius and his wingmen decide to disengage after destroying the 5 pieces of anti-tank artillery. While they are doing so, they see a lone T-34 rushing in at 200 meters and then closing in at 100 meters. This is the lone T-34 that had already advanced into the rear area. In Red Army Armored Assault Doctrine in 1944, the preferred tactic of the T-34 is to drive at full speed and open fire on the move against the flanks and the rear of the enemy. Turning the 88mm main cannon of the Tiger 360 degrees takes 30 seconds as they've been surprised from the flank. But before they could fire, the mysterious T-34 drove into a bomb crater and got bogged down and stuck. With the T-34 defeated, Carius and his wingmen turned their attention on the main body of T-34s. They launched a surprise rear attack at 700 meters and knock out 5 T-34s with their 88mm cannons. The supporting Soviet infantry start bugging out and fleeing from the battlefield. Carius received a radio call from command telling him that the infantry platoon has been pushed out of the ruins. They need to take it back or else all is lost. German heavy long-range army artillery start falling near the Tiger tanks, but halts after the German forward observation posts retreat from the battlefield. Carius and the wingman's Tiger tanks start drawing the attention of Soviet forward artillery observers. They shift their fire toward the Tiger tanks, thus drawing down pressure on what remains of Carius' infantry platoon. Carius' running gear has issues but is still operational. The two Tigers reposition themselves 300 meters away from the railroad embankment and cover the front line with their cannons. On March 17, 1944, 12:30 p.m., Carius spots a KV heavy tank 300 meters away with several T-34s and infantry support. The Tiger tanks open fire, inflicting losses. Carius' tank commander Periscope is knocked out by high-caliber anti-tank rifle fire. The Germans respond by knocking out the 6th enemy tank. 1 hour later at 1:30 p.m., the Soviet infantry had enough and start to withdraw. Carius and his wingmen have defeated the second attack on their position for the day. There will be a total of 4 attacks on this day. 8 kilometers to the rear, the main body of the 2nd Company, 502nd Heavy Panzer Battalion, listens to all of Carius' radio traffic going on at the front. There are only 2 Tiger tanks left undeployed in the 2nd Panzer Company. Carius proceeds to insult his company commander, 1st Lieutenant von Schiller. His company commander refused to support him in this fight with his Tiger. Von Schiller was so hated by Carius for what he considered to be incompetence and cowardice during the war, that Carius even slanders him hard in his memoir, Tigers in the Mud. To him, this officer was unfit to lead the 2nd Company. After too many mistakes during the war, 1st Lieutenant von Schiller would eventually get relieved of command and transferred out of the unit. Carius is also frustrated by a lack of artillery support to provide protective barrages. Apparently, the German artillery observers had been silenced or repelled. Also, Carius was not confident that he had enough ammunition to survive a 3rd attack. The Tiger tank had a maximum load of 188mm shells and 6,000 rounds for its coaxial and bow machine gun. At 3:15, the Soviets launched the 3rd attack of the day with another artillery preparation. Carius observes that this attack is even bigger than before and is at regimental scale, which is approximately 800 to 600 infantrymen in size. German long-range artillery, 210mm heavy shells from German Corps artillery strike the Soviet positions. Meanwhile, reinforcements and a supply truck arrive to help Carius and his men. The reinforcement is a single Tiger tank commanded by Gruber. Gruber complains that their company commander von Schiller's Tiger tank stayed behind instead of joining them. So instead of having 4 Tiger tanks, they're now left with 3. At 4:15 p.m., the 4th Soviet attack is initiated. This is another attack at regimental size, approximately 800 to 600 Soviet infantry. The attack collapses after the Tiger tanks knock out 3 enemy tanks. With the day won, Carius drives his Tiger to the regimental command post with damaged running gear. At the command post, Major Haas is shocked to know that all of the infantrymen in Carius' sector have run away from the battle. The front line is a 1 kilometer long empty space held by just 2 Tiger tanks commanded by Gruber and Kircher. Major Haas allocates his weak assault reserve to Carius to launch a counterattack to retake the lost ruins. The assault reserve is merely a 10-man infantry section led by a 2nd lieutenant with eyeglasses. With no time to lose, Carius sends the 10 infantrymen to occupy Ruin 1. Ruin 2, occupied and dug in by Soviet infantry, must be taken at all costs. 25 more German infantry are gathered from the rear directly behind Ruin 1. There are now 35 infantry and 3 Tiger tanks in Carius' sector preparing for the counterattack. At 10 p.m., Carius and his 3 Tiger tanks drive back to the rear for resupply. Everyone has high morale as they've just defeated 4 attacks in one day. In just one day of combat, Carius' Tiger tanks knock out 14 T-34s, 1 KV-1 heavy tank, and 5 pieces of 76mm Soviet anti-tank artillery. But it is not over. It is time to launch the counterattack. Thanks so much for watching. Please help out this channel by liking, subscribing, and ringing the notification bell. Please check out my Substack and my playlist. Comment below on what you think about Miyazaki's Tiger Tank manga.